The NFL's negotiating window opened and the moves came. We're going to talk all about it today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins, and we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to issue a big thank you, shout out, and welcome to our everydayers. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much.
Joe, there's not a lot that's better than this. If you're into the things that we talk about on this program, which is team building across the league, the window for negotiating new contracts and the team building strategies and the trades of the Laremy Tunsils of the world and how teams are choosing to spend their dollars, who's playing in the deep end of the pool, who's shopping on a budget, who's decided they're not shopping at all. We have so much that we're not going to touch on, but we're going to try to touch on as much as we possibly can here today. So I have no fun like ad libs or national days of the day that are made up today. You want to dive in?
Let's dive in. And I think you had to start with quarterbacks, right? Where we've got a couple teams that found a starter, some teams that are still looking, but Sam Darnold goes to the Seattle Seahawks, which was kind of what we were expecting after they traded away Geno Smith. And I mean, obviously it wasn't a huge spend with 3 years, $100 million. That's not crazy big money. It's good for Sam Darnold, right? To get his career going and to get a bag like that. Curious to see how Seattle is able to maximize him in this offense. Obviously, they got needs at the interior offensive line. You got to figure out the receivers, but they certainly have an intriguing offensive approach with the run game and the backs that they have. Kubiak coming in as the offensive coordinator. I'm curious to see how it comes together, but they take a chance to probably give similar money to Darnold as they would Geno. They get a third-round pick. They get younger, probably more upside. And, our biggest commitment to this point yet for a starting quarterback.
Yeah, and obviously a big offensive shift for Seattle in general. We'll talk about DK in the next block, but for the quarterback carousel, certainly feels like we have some momentum for a couple different next steps too. When you consider Rodgers, had a visit yesterday in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
The Giants apparently have had their eyes on Rodgers for some time, but they may have to pivot to this would be plan C for them.
Yeah.
For the New York Giants.
Yeah.
If Rodgers ends up taking Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh kind of felt like that team, and I know we've talked about this before, that with where you've been with your quarterback situation the last couple of years with Mike Tomlin and Rodgers and his personality and the extra things that he brings, especially at a late stage portion of his career where he doesn't care what you think at all. Like if there was ever a place that could accommodate that and get the most out of that, it felt like it could have been Pittsburgh with their environment. And it feels like that's going to be the next shoe that drops.
Like a reluctant one. I'm not sure either side really wants each other, which doesn't feel good going into a situation. But at the same time, and I feel like we said this about Aaron Rodgers with the Jets, it's like certainly he can elevate the quarterback play, which hasn't been good in either spot. Mm-hmm. And obviously it didn't lead to postseasons, runs or anything like that with the Jets. But I think the Steelers are a more stable roster outside of the quarterback position, which I think was probably misguided with a lot of the perception with where the Jets really were roster-wise, where I think there's a lot more stable situation with the Steelers. I'm not sure there's a better path, but it feels like a reluctant path, which is not really a good place to be.
Yeah, and a lot of this comes down to what I think is interesting is you consider Rodgers, and when he had his renaissance in Green Bay, it was because who was brought in? Head coach Matt LaFleur. Who did they hire to replace Matt LaFleur as the offensive coordinator in Tennessee?
Arthur Smith,
who is now the offensive coordinator where? In Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh, yeah.
So that piece of the puzzle will be a big one if this is going to work, assuming that this happens. But that's where my mind goes. But, of course, other positions in the carousel that need to be filled as well, Joe.
Yeah. How about Justin Fields with the Jets? Was it 2 years, $40 million? So we didn't make a huge commitment here. And obviously, I don't think this takes anything out of the picture for the Jets if they wanted to draft a quarterback in April. But, I mean, I'm a little curious. I've been a Justin Fields fan since the days at Ohio State. Now he's reunited with Garrett Wilson. Maybe sounds like Pittsburgh maybe wanted Justin Fields back, and he's like, y'all benched me after I led you to 4-1. You can kick rocks. I'm going to go to the Jets and see what's going to happen there with Aaron Glenn. Big opportunity for Justin Fields. If it's going to happen, right, it's got to happen with the Jets. And we've seen kind of some rehabbed quarterbacks in Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield. Maybe Justin Fields is the next one.
Yeah, and let's not forget, reunited with Garrett Wilson.
Yeah.
As well. So that for an offensive line that had a lot of investments last year, that's where I think about what the Jets can be. Breece Hall, talented player, obviously had the injury early in his career and hasn't lived up to what I think his full potential is, but an explosive player like that in the backfield with an offensive line that has John Simpson was a free agent hit for them. They do have Elijah Vera Tucker under contract. They drafted Joe Tippmann, who looks like he's going to be a hit for them. They had Olu Fashanu at left tackle. They got a lot of players who were in place playing next to one another, which is helpful time on task to kind of do some of the things that you thought and aspired that maybe Chicago would do with Justin Fields with the quarterback run game and the coherency there. And it didn't happen. And Justin never really clicked with any of his receivers the way that he should click with Garrett Wilson. So if you're going to paint an optimistic picture, and for the price point, like you mentioned, there's nothing restrictive and cost prohibitive about this for Justin Fields. So I like this bet for the Jets.
So, Kyle, there's 3 unsettled quarterback spots. Titans, Browns, Giants. You know what's familiar about
assuming Rodgers goes to
Pittsburgh. Yeah. You know what's interesting about those 3 teams?
They pick in the top 3.
1, 2, and 3 in the draft. So some of this is going to push until then. But interesting to see how this kind of shapes up. The teams that are outside of the top 3 did something, or, of course, with the assumption of Rodgers to Pittsburgh, where, okay, is this a situation where, after a long deliberation, we just kind of come back to the norms of the world and quarterbacks dominate the first few picks of the draft, even if they're not necessarily worth the picks?
Well, so I guess what's interesting is, Adam Schefter had about a month ago, really confident the Browns are going to pick a quarterback at 2, talked about the economics of it and their quarterback. I think he said, what was it, yesterday or end of last week or over the weekend? I'm not as confident anymore that the Browns are going to take a quarterback at 2. So maybe take that at face value when your opening negotiations and free agency has officially begun and that there's a bunch of layers to kind of sort through. But I thought that was interesting for the one of the marquee insiders going as strongly on the record as I would be very surprised if the Browns don't take a quarterback and then changing his tune here. Kind of, I think, creates some more unpredictability where you're only going to have so many options if you're the Browns.
Yeah. Well, Kenny Pickett in the fray for them is a trade, which is a nice segue.
There you go.
Into trades, which we'll talk about here on the other side of it. Folks, be sure to stick with us. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Taking care of your mental health can feel like a big investment, but it's just as important as taking care of your body. Traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session, but with BetterHelp, you can save up to 50% per session. BetterHelp offers a flat fee for weekly online therapy sessions, making professional support more accessible and affordable. With over 30,000 therapists and over 5 million people helped, it's the world's largest online therapy platform. Look, we spend money on gym memberships and healthy food. Why not invest in our mental well-being too? Therapy isn't just for tough times. It's a great tool for learning coping skills and how to set boundaries. It's easy to fit BetterHelp into your schedule because whether you're working, parenting, or always on the go, they can make it work. And you don't always have to be going through a major crisis to benefit from therapy. Sometimes it's just about having someone to talk to. Your well-being is worth it. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon.
You get a load of what the Vikings are doing as we speak?
Brother, Kwesi he did not sleep in this morning.
They said, okay, we're going to take that Sam Darnold franchise tag dollar amount we kind of had set off to the side for a rainy day, and we're going to spend it on John Allen. Got 3 for $60 this morning. Javon Hargrave got a contract, so now Hargrave and John Allen playing on the offensive interior or defensive interior Minnesota. And, oh, by the way, on the offensive interior as well, Will Fries got 5 for $88. Yeah. $17.6 million for Will Fries.
And they spent yesterday on defense, didn't they? Or other players on defense, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but before this flurry of moves, they were already looking at $157 million in total contract commitments.
Yeah,
based off of where we were at like 8:30, like an hour ago.
Ryan Kelly, they paid. Byron Murphy got a big deal to come back. Aaron Jones, yeah, they're doing things. Doing things in Minnesota. All right. So trades, Laremy Tunsil, that guy gets traded.
Again.
Yeah. Let's talk about it.
I'm going to pull up the full terms because I don't have them up.
Please do.
Okay.
While you're pulling that up, interesting kind of from the Houston side of things. I think a lot of people were maybe confused because they cut Shaq Mason. They trade away Laremy Tunsil, and offensive line's been the issue. And you kind of feel like that was their best 2 offensive linemen. If you saw Lance Zierlein's tweet, it's pretty telling about, just the right mix of leadership in the locker room, and felt like it was directed towards those subtractions and kind of undergoing an identity shift there with the offensive line. And of course, with, offensive coordinator as well. We'll see how that materializes, but surely you have them up by now.
Via Adam Schefter of ESPN, I'm reading off Pro Football Talk. The Washington Commanders are sending a 2025 third-round pick, a 2025 seventh-round pick, a 2026 second-round pick, and a 2026 fourth-round pick to the Houston Texans. The Texans are sending a 2025 4 back to the Commanders with Tunsil. What's the record for most draft picks a player's been traded for in his career? Because if you did the trade value chart, values of what Houston traded to get Tunsil from Miami back in 2019, and now what he's getting traded for again, he might be at the top of the list.
Brandon Cooks might have something to say about it, but yeah.
I know Ricky Williams got traded for on draft day. It was a whole draft class that they traded for Ricky Williams.
Right.
So that one's up there. There's been some monsters. Was it Eric Dickerson? Wasn't that another monster deal?
Big, yeah.
Back in the late 80s. So there's been some big ones, but Tunsil's working his way up the charts here. So the main takeaway for Houston, they get a 3 and a 7 this year and a 2 and a 4 next year for Laremy.
It's not nothing. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, that's almost as many false starts as Laremy Tunsil had in the first half of the year.
I just can't believe it's never got better.
Right? Feels like the most fixable thing.
Here waiting for, all right, just lock in. Don't move at the snap.
The snap count. They tell you it in the huddle. You know it.
You have the advantage of being the offensive player, right?
The weirdest one on a guy that's ever never gone away for like a high-end player. He goes to Washington. Obviously a need there to upgrade this offensive line. especially, didn't Cosme got hurt like late in the season last year too.
Yes, with a significant injury.
So this wasn't on my radar, right? Like I wasn't thinking about Laremy Tunsil being anyone's answer at left tackle other than Houston's. But it feels like a nice surprise for Washington. And I think Washington's kind of had a good approach with what they were able to do last year. Quarterback on a rookie deal, but also needing to add some talent. And they take a couple swings here at Deebo Samuel and Laremy Tunsil.
Yeah.
I don't love the Javon Kinlaw deal. We'll get to that later, but
yeah, what the heck's going on with that one?
Brother, between that and Tershawn Wharton, like I have a lot of questions.
So just if you're keeping score at home, Laremy Tunsil, he's an amazing player. I think he's a great upgrade, and what Brandon Coleman can like maybe this frees up Brandon Coleman to play inside.
Or right, yeah, probably so.
With the, as you mentioned, the Cosme injury, and Tunsil can step in and play left tackle, where Coleman was credited with giving up 10 sacks last year versus Tunsil. Let's see, the last he's been credited in giving up 10 sacks in the last 4 years combined. Laremy Tunsil has, versus Brandon Coleman at 10 as a rookie. So that's progress. Tunsil was penalized 19 times last year, with an additional 2 that were declined. Tunsil's been in the league since 16. How many penalties do you think Laremy Tunsil's had called against him? The vast majority of these are just false starts.
What is that, 10 years?
16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. 9 seasons. This is year 10 for him.
I'll guess I'm guessing it's more than 10 a year. I'll guess 100 penalties.
96 accepted penalties and an additional 7 declined. Yeah. The vast majority of which are false starts.
You can't decline the false starts, I mean, like
right. Yeah. So, but to your point about maximizing this opportunity with Jaden Daniels, we're seeing it in Minnesota too, which we just gave them their flowers for. So a little bit unrelated, but at the same time, JJ McCarthy, who they're betting on, I think they're going to hedge whether it's Daniel Jones or someone else as a backup quarterback of significance there. But freeing up the Sam Darnold money leads to them spending, and obviously Jaden Daniels, and you're trying to chase down Philadelphia, and the trench advantage was massive in that postseason game. Mm-hmm. Teams with that reduced payroll pushing their chips in, and it's the part of the rookie contract that you romanticize at the quarterback position. There is no better economic return than a good quarterback on a rookie contract. What do you got? Looks like you're looking at something.
No, my head is spinning here as you kind of like started talking through all this. I'm thinking the NFC's kind of getting cutthroat right now with what Minnesota's doing. Green Bay's been aggressive. Detroit
pendulum swinging back the other way a little bit, right?
Washington, LA's been after it. Tampa's after it.
Oh, and then on the AFC side of things, you've seen like some regression from where Cincinnati was, and Miami's coming down off of like what their peak of their cycle was. Now the West is cycling back up.
Yeah.
But, for a long time, you looked at if you did the power rankings of our rosters and you said, man, I don't know, the AFC's got like 7 of the top 10 teams here from a roster perspective. Yeah. The pendulum's swinging the other way now for sure, like you just pointed out.
It's like the quarterback advantage is still very much AFC. But these teams I think they're kind of smelling some blood in the water. The opportunity ahead of them.
Yeah, it'll be fun to see what teams stabilize out of that.
Right.
Because there's teams that make the bump and there's the 1 year bump for spending a lot of money, but usually the year 2 regression exists and you lose half of the win gains that you made from the previous year. But you got some teams, and that's what we're going to get into next. 2 great segues on today's show, which we love good segues here. Looking at the teams that have spent the most in free agency through the first almost 24 hours. By the time you listen, it might be 24 hours, and the rankings of that list may change. But as of 8:30 this morning, the top 5 spenders, we're going to look at what they got for their money and which ones we like the most. So stick with us.
This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. an expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so that you can focus on your day. An expert who will find every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also that you can get the most money back. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees.
Needless to say, Minnesota might be one on this list right now.
Dude.
I mean, it was 88 for Fries.
Yeah.
It was 60 for John Allen. Do we know what the Hargrave terms were?
It might not matter. That's
probably
probably going to put
just those two in and of itself is almost another 150 over the 150 that they spent yesterday.
Yeah, they're the highest spending team right now is the Vikings.
Okay, so that leaves us. We're going to look at the 5 teams as of 8:30 this morning. Please don't get mad if your team has entered into the chat and we did it, if it happened at 10 a.m. It's not the list that we have courtesy of Jason from Over the Cap. Spending by team, top 5 teams thus far: New England Patriots, New York Giants, Minnesota Vikings, Seattle Seahawks, Green Bay Packers. Who do we like the most for what they got? For me, it might be the Packers.
Okay.
No. Well, it's probably Minnesota.
It's for me, it's definitely Minnesota. Yeah.
It's Minnesota. As I'm processing not just what they did yesterday and also stacking. Oh, they got John Allen. Oh, they got Will Fry. They got Javon Hargrave. But the Packers might be 2 for me.
I don't hate that. I mean, like, look at, of course, there's contracts, like there's very real dynamics here, but like just how they improve their team. I think for Minnesota, getting serious about the interior offensive line, dude, how long have we been talking about this?
Right. And it was like the Dalton Risner experience for 2 years. And like
Ed
Dalton
Ingram
Risner had his whole public campaign about playing and getting a contract and how good he was in Denver and didn't get a deal. And then he signed late, and then they tried to get rid of him and couldn't find anybody, so they brought him back, right? Like, much more stable opportunity with Ryan Kelly and Will Fries. Transplant from the Colts offensive line. It's not a bad place to pull from.
No, especially with a rookie he's a rookie quarterback. JJ McCarthy.
Listen, if Ben Simmons can win rookie of the year after,
that's not how it goes. It's not how it goes. So he's not eligible for rookie of the year. So we just have to accept
Apparently he was, but
not in the NFL. But I love that. You fortify the interior offensive line, so it's not an issue when JJ McCarthy steps into this. And then for like this pressure-oriented defense, to add John Allen and John Hargrave, boy, are you kidding? Like, that's big-time pass rush upside. And then like Isaiah Rodgers, sneaky good addition there at corner. And then you bring back Byron Murphy for the big money. Like, I dig it. I absolutely dig this.
Yeah. Really good job at aggressively addressing their needs. And to your point, with JJ McCarthy coming in, having the protection in line so that A, this player that's coming off of an injury is confident, and then B, making sure your protection's on the same page for him. Having guys that already played next to each other is really helpful.
It's a good point. Yeah, it's a good point.
So that's Minnesota. Green Bay didn't spend on a lot of players, but they spent a lot for players. Nate Hobbs got 4 for 48. Absolute dog as a player. And corner was a big need for them too.
100%. And if you haven't figured this out by now, Green Bay likes versatile defensive backs, right? Like a lot of conversation about Hobbs. Is he best in the slot? Is he best outside? Either is probably okay, but it speaks to that versatility that they crave from those DBs.
Right. So you're moving on from Jair Alexander. You already had a vacancy at the other outside corner spot.
Yeah, they still need work. They still got to find some corners, but this is a good start.
What they did with the safety room last year.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Signing McKinney, or drafting
Evan Williams
and Bullard. They drafted Javon Bullard too.
Right.
So versatility in that group, plus now Nate Hobbs. it's a really dangerous group in the secondary that I think they can continue to stack and add on to. But a player like that is a huge add and at a fraction of the rate of what Jair Alexander was costing you on an annual basis, almost half.
Yeah.
Aaron Banks, offensive line situation for them is really fascinating, right? Because you could see they drafted Jordan Morgan in the first round last year.
Mm-hmm.
They have Sean Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
They chose to let why is his name escaping me? The center walked. Josh Meyer.
Josh Meyer. He hasn't signed anywhere yet, but it seems like he's going.
I mean, the tea leaves coming out was that he's not going to be back with the team, and then they spent 19 and a quarter for Aaron Banks, which is I think more than I would have paid for Aaron Banks. But when you consider Sean Ryan potentially at one of the guard spots, are they going to move Zach Tom to center? Is Elgton Jenkins going to bump out and play left tackle? Like, they've got a lot of potential combinations here that I think are really, really interesting for them with this addition.
You could talk me into so many things.
Yeah.
Because is Rasheed Walker's can be the left tackle. Banks at left guard. Jenkins can be the center. Where does Jordan Morgan play guard or tackle?
I guess Jordan Morgan would be the right tackle with Sean Ryan at right guard and Zach Tom at center and Elgton Jenkins at left tackle and Banks at left guard. Like, that might be my favorite combination.
The only thing I know for sure is that Aaron Banks is going to be the left guard.
Right.
Right.
Anything else could totally be feasible and happen.
Yeah. That's why they'll have a camp
and
in
keep that whole group. Do you think they move one of those players? Like, do they move Sean Ryan, who's been like in a platoon at right guard for a while?
Maybe. I mean, not a bad sixth offensive lineman, though.
No, but with the amount of versatility that they have, like you could legit take four of the starters and play them at feasibly any of the five spots, right? Like that's unheard of versatility that they have with that group.
Right.
So I like that add in that element for Green Bay. Other side of the coin, biggest questions you have amongst the top five spenders. We have not talked about the Giants, the Seahawks, or the Patriots.
Well, I think I certainly have the most questions about the Seahawks. I mean, pretty much all of their spending has been Sam Darnold, and we don't have any answers for the questions we have at receiver or the interior offensive line. So I think it's comfortably Seattle.
Yeah.
Where the Patriots, like they definitely spent a lot of money, and I'm not here to clown the Patriots. Like I think they kind of had to. They had a bunch of money to spend, but like you're lying if you don't think the Patriots didn't improve the floor of the roster. They absolutely did. Yeah.
But at the cost in which they had to do it is the nature of being a team that has been in a rut, and you have a quote unquote bad. Like I like the Spillane ad for them a lot.
He's really come on.
I know you were bummed out when you saw Robert Spillane was a New England Patriot.
More bummed out when Mac Hollins became a New England Patriot, but
take Mac Hollins and his super endearing role that he's become a fan favorite for every team he's ever played for.
Right.
Take that piece of it out with that being very raw for you. You like Spillane, right?
I've liked Spillane for a long time. I think, and especially because he's a different kind of linebacker.
Yeah.
I can only do the Juwan Bentley, Jelani Tavai
experience so much.
It's just not for me. It's just not for me. And now they get him. They get some penetration style players like a Milton Williams. They paid crazy money for him. Crazy money. Right. But he helps their football team. Carlton Davis and Christian Gonzalez, like, we just going to run bump and run all day and say good luck?
Probably.
You could see the vision, I mean, if hopefully for them, Christian Barmore can be healthy. Christian Barmore, Keon White, Milton Williams. I mean, that's pretty nice. I don't think much of Harold Landry, but as like a slasher type player for them in a different role that he played last year is probably going to unlock more from his game.
Right. And then Spillane playing behind it.
Yeah. It's like kind of your cleanup player.
Physical guys they want to keep.
Yeah.
And Spillane's got some really nice working coverage, not as like a rangy player, but like he takes really good angles and he's very effective tackling at the catch point for a linebacker that I think plays with kind of the motor, but not the dynamic athleticism that you'd maybe associate with being a player that like, I think this guy can be an impactful player in coverage. Now he's not going to make a bunch of plays on the ball, but And then you have Morgan Moses stabilizing one of your offensive tackle spots mercifully. So now Michael Onwenu can kick inside and play at guard where he should be playing.
That might be the biggest positional upgrade of anything that happens across the league this year, is going from DeMontre Jacobs to Morgan Moses at right tackle.
No more temptation to kick Onwenu out there. Just leave it right guard.
Yeah.
So yes, this is the team that I think is going to experience the 1 year bump.
Well, Mike Vrabel's going to coach this team to 7 wins, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now you got, I think this defense is legitimately going to be good.
Yeah, I think they're going to push for 500 this season.
The rest of the way, let's get a little bit more O-line. Let's get some weapons and let's go to war, And
then we'll see what the sustainability of that looks like. But it's a great step in the right direction for a team that really needed to infuse some talent into the mix.
No doubt.
That it?
I believe that's it.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for us. I don't think anything else crazy happened while we were on. Just Minnesota spending Perch. Am I
Marco Wilson to the Bengals. I mean, Elijah Campbell back to the Dolphins. Like as soon as we hit record, I mean, it's big stuff,
Yeah, there you go. All right, that's gonna do it for us. We're out of here before any news hits. Kyle Crabbs, Joe Marino, appreciate you guys as always. Check out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. Enjoy all the news the rest of the way. I'll talk to you again tomorrow.